I've been investigating and exposing the global ring of what you might call, not really, but it's what it's called, the elite of the world. And it is a global pedophile ring, not rings, in the end. The big one I'm talking about, the elite one. There are obviously aspects of it in different parts of the world, but in the end, it is part of one global ring. And there's reasons for this. There's reasons for the obsession with pedophilia and child abuse, which I go into in the books. The reason, let me say first of all, that this abuse ring, which is also connected into the satanic child sacrifice rings, indeed at the top, or at the inner core, whichever analogy you want, the satanic sacrifice rings and the pedophile elite ring globally are actually aspects of the same thing. And the reason it's not come out is because both victims of it who've survived, many don't, and those who are seeking to expose it have been subjected to ridicule, abuse, dismissal, and all that goes with it. I mean, I'm a personification of that very response because of what abuse I've had over the years, putting this information out. Now, if we are going to bring to the surface what is really happening to children worldwide on a staggering scale, then what we need first of all and primarily, bottom line, is the free flow of information, the free flow of opinion, and the free flow of information. Now, we are not going to have that if all that happens when anyone questions even some details of someone else's view, i.e., let's talk about, in this case, Pizzagate, that they are going to be subjected to what they are being subjected to now. Because what that means is you're blocking the free flow of opinion and the free flow of information by intimidating people into silence, which is exactly how this whole pedophile network globally has been kept under wraps all this time. Going back as far as 1998, I published this book, The Biggest Secret, which named people like the former Prime Minister of Britain, Edward Heath, as a paedophile and Satanist. And the passage in the book was read to him. He was still an MP, Member of Parliament at the time. Was read to him in the week of publication. What did he do? Nothing. Why? Because it was true. And it took nearly 20 years for a police investigation triggered by other sources, not mine, to start into the child abuse allegations against Edward Heath. Of course, now, as with all aspects of this child abuse, paedophilia revelation in Britain that came out after the revelations about the BBC entertainer and record-breaking paedophile Jimmy Savile, the investigation of Ted Heath is being attacked by aspects of the media, usual suspects, to try to kill that, as they did the same with killing investigations into Leon Britton, a Margaret Thatcher cabinet minister and Home Secretary who I named in a later book, again while he was still alive. And in The Biggest Secret, Someone else I named in 1998 was a guy called Lord Alistair McAlpine. He was the Svengali spinner and closest of close associates throughout her period as Prime Minister of Margaret Thatcher. He was named to me by enough people for me to take it seriously and name him in the book during the 1990s. And of course, after the Savile revelations, there was this scandal in Britain when it was alleged that Lord McAlpine was a paedophile. And he then goes around threatening libel actions and instigating one or two over people actually in the end didn't name him directly. And he got massive payouts from the BBC and independent television, who neither of which named him. Go figure. And I named him in the 1990s in The Biggest Secret. And I named him again on the internet after the revelations became public all that time later. And he never even contacted me. And it's interesting that he was the spinner of and Svengali of Margaret Thatcher. The revelations about the Westminster paedophile ring were based upon the period of the Thatcher government. Margaret Thatcher was a very close friend of Jimmy Savile, and Jimmy Savile was an inner circle bosom buddy of the British royal family, brought into that circle in the 1960s by Lord Mountbatten, member of the royal family, who was a known paedophile. There is a massive elite paedophile network operating out of Washington, D.C. and out of the elite of the United States. And indeed, in the Biggest Secret, I expose Father George Bush as a notorious pedophile and abuser of children. And then there is another book, Transformation of America by Cathy O'Brien. This came out in 1995, and I met Cathy O'Brien and her partner very soon after the book came out. And I spent a lot of time with her talking about her experiences. I met her daughter, Kelly, who was born into captivity, literally, because Cathy O'Brien was one of an extraordinary number of young people who are taking into mind control projects which connect into the pedophile rings, connect into the satanic rings, and are turned literally into sex slaves who are used and abused by the elite, and then can't remember what happened until they're deprogrammed, like Cathy's been. What happened, thus keeping the elite people safe from exposure. It's called trauma-based mind control, creating multiple personality disorder, known now as dissociative identity disorder. I've talked about this and written about this at great length. And Kelly, Cathy's daughter, was born while Cathy was still in a government mind control project, a project known as Project Monarch, an elite part of a mind control operation in America that actually became public, called MK Ultra. And what Cathy describes in the book from her period in captivity, from a small child through into her 30s, was the unspeakable unspeakable behavior of the Clinton family, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and the Bush family in the form of Father George Bush, and people like Dick Cheney, and a stream of other people in that same period of the Reagan, Bush and Bush administrations. Unspeakable is a word that doesn't even begin to cut it. Not just child abuse sexually, but torture. The sexual and abuse and torture of young women and others. And these, by the way, are the people that gave the order to invade countries and bomb countries. Anyone think that they will have any empathy with the people on the other end of the bombs? Whether it's in Syria or Libya or Iraq? When you have such a deleted empathy, a capacity for empathy, that you will do that to kids. What goes on behind the scenes is so fantastic, so horrible, so horrific, that so many people, and you've got to understand that, and understand why, find it difficult, who've not done the research, who've not spoken to the people involved, and I've spoken to legions of them, in terms of the victims. They find it impossible to bridge that gap between the world as they think it is and the world in the shadows as it really is. And there was, of course, more confirmation of this in America with the revelations of a Nebraska state senator called John W. DeCamp, who wrote a book called The Franklin Cover-Up, which didn't set out to expose or uncover an elite pedophile ring connected to the Republican Party. It set out to investigate the corruption of something called the Franklin Credit Union in Nebraska, which was headed by a guy called Lawrence King, a big Republican who actually sang the national anthem at the Republican conventions in 1984 and 1988. And what DeCamp did, as he was uncovering the corruption for which Lawrence King was eventually jailed, he found that King was running an elite pedophile ring, supplying children to elite politicians in the Republican Party at conventions and what have you. Exactly the same theme and exactly the same story that you hear around the world in terms of political pedophiles in Britain and in Australia. I mean, does anyone really think that it's just a coincidence that people have come out in America, they've come out in Britain, they've come out in Australia and other countries talking about this, describing the same themes, the same abuse, the same elite networks, and it's all a coincidence and they're all just making it up? That's what the media want you to believe. This idea that there are codes, for instance, of pizza and hot dog and other things that connect to a pedophile coded language where these things appear to say one thing but are actually talking about children. Now again, we need to go back to where those codes came from to see if they come from a credible source and they can be taken as read. But when you read these emails involving people like John Podesta, who was the chairman of Hillary Clinton's election campaign, or non-election campaign, and his brother Tony Podesta, a lobbyist in Washington, some of them certainly appear to be written in code. You know, it's been said that the Podestas are creepy. And John Podesta, of course, not only has served Hillary Clinton's election campaign, but was chief of staff to Bill Clinton when he was president, and was a very close advisor to Barack Obama. So this is a big wig in Washington. And people have said that that the Podestas are creepy. Well, in my view, the Podestas are creepy. I mean, Tony Podesta seems to have a very strange taste in art. For instance, one of his favorite artists, he said, is someone, a Serbian artist, who paints pictures of semi-clad, semi-naked children looking very traumatized, and of children tied up floating dead in swimming pools. I mean, hello? Creepy, are you kidding? The people that are making the decisions that dictate our lives are not like most of the population is. And we need to kind of understand that. There is the world that the population lives in, and then there's the world that they live in, which is very different, to say the least. Then we have this connection to Jeffrey Epstein, who has been a close friend and associate of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's had something like 26 times that he's been on Epstein's plane, which is known as the Lolita Express because of its connection to pedophilia. Epstein is a friend of Hillary Clinton. He's a friend of, or certainly was, of people like Donald Trump, of Prince Andrew, and many others that would be called elite. And then you look in Britain, when we're putting together all these pieces of information, which, when you put them together, create a situation where these elite pedophile rings, or ring in the end, are actually in plain sight. But you need to take these apparently different pieces of information and situations and put them together, and then suddenly the pixels become a picture. If the truth came out of the scale of child abuse, child torture, child sacrifice, Satanism, involving some of the most famous political leaders, politicians, and connected people, that came out, the system would fall, because people en masse would see the force that's really controlling their lives, and how it has an obsession with children, for reasons I explained in the books. There's a lot more background needed before that can be adequately explained. And in the end, if the free flow of information is allowed to prevail, the truth will, indeed must, come out.
If you enjoyed today's video on Anonymous Official, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching and sticking with us.